All right, everyone, we're going to get started. These live webinars are awesome, aren't they? Where they get a little bit of extra action. You get to see behind the scenes. So a couple of things. First of all, really excited to be here. It's January 2026. It's a new year. Lots of things that are exciting that we're looking forward to. Um, we came up with this idea for the webinar by looking back and saying, hey, our TI advisors talk with clients every day. They are helping them to understand what problems they have and try to figure out ways that they can improve their workflows in Feedly. And then we thought, well, why don't we share some of that knowledge across the team? So we'll think of, so we went out and we asked the TI advisors to come in and come up with some ideas of what are some tips that they thought were adding a lot of value to their customers, and that's what they're here to share today. So really excited. We've got five and soon six TI advisors that will be here. But before I do that, just going to start with a little background on Feedly. We do this every time, and I just want to make sure that if you're not familiar with Feedly, you have a little bit of an idea what Feedly does. So if you're in cyber threat intelligence and you're doing things like you're going to websites and you're looking at the latest articles on cybersecurity news and threats and stuff. Uh, Feedly can totally change the way that you're doing your work. And so what Feedly's doing is we're looking across the web. We're looking at all those websites that you think are trusted and valued. We're also looking at blogs, and we're looking at social media, and we're looking at all that thing. So we have our 10,000 plus trusted sources list, and we're pulling in all that data. And every day we pull in millions of documents and we scan through them, and we use these AI models that look for things that look like entities and objects and threat actors and IoCs, and we pull all that stuff into what we call our threat graph. And so even if something doesn't have like a TTP ID number, we'll look at how it's described, and we'll associate that with that particular TTP ID, MITRE ID number, and we'll pull that all into our threat graph. And what is our threat graph? It's this relationship of how all these things are connected together across, dozens and hundreds of articles that have associated different things. And so what you get from that is you get the connections between the threat actor and the malware they use and the vulnerabilities they exploit and the IOCs that relate to all of this. And you understand the attack sequences that they've used. And from all that information, you can better narrow down everything that relates to you, and then you can say, hey, I'm really interested in the threat actors that are targeting this particular TTP, because I know in my environment it's not fully I don't have all the mitigations I'd like to have. So you figure out who's going after it. Are they going after your industry? And then you can create different mitigation plans. You can share all that information with your team in different ways. And so maybe you're using the tip. We can feed all this information into the tip. It's really going to help you, especially if you're seeing like, hey, my tip doesn't really have all the relationships that I want. My tip has a lot of noise in it, things like that. We'll totally crush down that noise. We totally, help improve all those relationships. And then the other thing that's really important here is if you want to do stuff right within Feedly and create reports, we make it super easy. We have something called Ask AI, which allows you to query the threat graph and all that information in there, as well as the articles or a particular Intel agent that we have that's pulled in all this information about a particular threat actor or CVE, et cetera, and ask more details. We're Because we have this threat graph, because we're feeding that into the AI, what you get is better answers that come out of it. So the better context that comes from the threat graph gets fed in as you ask those questions, and then you get better answers that are more actionable. They're more grounded in that in the kind of threat intel that you're looking at. We also have something called the report builder, which allows you to take a simple question and turn that into a more report. We have automated newsletters, which allow you to kind of send daily, weekly newsletters to whoever your team is, and you can do that. Um, Multiple newsletters to different stakeholders, all with the tone and the level of detail that suits that particular stakeholder. And then in the fall, we introduced a new MCP server, which is really cool. It leverages the threat graph and the power of an LLM to kind of ask any question and have it ground those answers in the threat graph. So all this stuff is part of Feedly. threat intelligence. It's much more than what you might know of as the Feedly newsreader. With that said, I'm going to start moving into this thing, and we're going to get a bunch of tips that are going to touch on a bunch of these different features. So if you're new to Feedly, you'll get a little bit more detail as we go through. All that said, just some housekeeping. We are recording this. We will send out the recording tomorrow. We will also send out any of the questions and answers that you put in the Q&A. So if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A. And we will also send out these slides. So all that stuff, well, we'll send out a link to the slides. All that stuff will be sent out tomorrow. So please engage with the Q&A, ask a question. We'll try to get an answer to you directly. If we don't do it in writing, we'll try to break into the conversation and ask that question if we have time. All right, so here are our six TI advisors. So TI advisors, they don't know what the question I'm out there talking with customers, but everybody come off mute, so you're ready to answer, solve problems weekly, to tweak and I will just ping pong around better and more impactful, and to get better intel out of Feedly. Okay, I'm going to just go in the order. They have a lot of insight into the kinds of questions that our customers are asking and how they can really, and this is wide open, certain parts of the workflows. I'd like to change the most. That's what we asked them to do is to come today and to present some of their best tips that they're getting and things that will help them
ready for
improve.
that
So
question.
one thing we like to do here is we do a real quick round of finish the sentence.
Might sound like a simple answer, but
is
yeah,
just
so I changed my phone. I currently have an Android phone, and I'm thinking of moving to an iPhone.
Alessandro.
Oh God, tough to follow that one. Maybe getting out for more cycling rides. Been itching up here in Toronto. It's a little bit cold, so yeah, I would love to get after it a bit more there.
Andy.
Probably my routine, trying to get a more stabilized routine. It's a little hard to my child. Yeah.
Awesome. Saif.
Hablas español. I'm learning Spanish, so I'll speak a lot more Spanish.
Hey, I love that goal. Carlo.
Buy more Lego. You can't see it because of the screen, but I have a good collection, but it needs more. It needs to be more there.
So the change is more. Okay, I got it. Aaron.
Continuing to capture a lot of different ideas and things in a more sustainable way so I can access and continue to work on some of those projects.
Okay. All right. Well, you might have just answered the next question. So the next question is things I'd like to keep the same in 2026. So Denise, go ahead.
I'd say my consistency with tennis practice. I've started tennis this year and I've been going 3 times a week, and I'd like to keep that.
Nice. Alessandro.
Pasta twice a week. Always looking forward to that.
Pasta nights, plural. Awesome. Andy.
Well, you just keep the stretching and workout routines, I guess.
All right. Seth?
Yeah, I was going to say my weight.
Keep your weight the same. That's a good one. Yep. Carlo?
It seems boring now, but I'm in the same group. I'm in a health and fitness kick at the moment, so I'm going to keep that routine going.
Keep the routine going. Very good. Aaron?
Continue the intentionality around spending, being more diligent there.
All right. Awesome. I guess I didn't answer myself. I'm really interested in trying to learn the guitar. I've tried 3 times before, and I've started over from scratch. So starting on just how do I play a chord, a simple chord, and it's 15 minutes a day, and I'm following the ChatGPT guided tour. So that's my goal. That's also my change. Try to be good. All right, guys, we're gonna quickly move into the agenda here. I'll let you read it really quickly. Each one of our speakers will talk about this when we get into their section. We're going to be roughly 6 to 7 minutes per person. So if you have questions, please, please ask them in the Q&A. And I'm going to jump right into Aaron. Sorry.
Great. Cool. Thank you. Thanks everybody for joining. I'm seeing a lot of familiar names out there in the attendees, so good to see everybody. And yeah, today I'm going to be discussing third-party risk. I'm just going to share my screen here and dive in. Mainly for the GRC challenge. It's actually been a topic that's been coming up quite frequently with some of my customer calls. So just wanted to kind of go through some of those workflows again. I know we talked a lot about the different types of features that we have, but I think it's really fun for this type of a workshop to show how to actually utilize those features and get the most out of Feedly here. So problem that I'm discussing today is looking at vendor due diligence that requires independent security validation. That's beyond just questionnaires. Manual research can't really keep up with the procurement speed or like monitoring these new vendors post contract. So the solution at a high level, and I'll dive into kind of how to solve this in Feedly, but we're really trying to build towards automated intelligence workflows that handle this due diligence, maintaining that continuous monitoring, and also looking for when your attack surface is expanding through M&A changes and things that might trigger reevaluation. Also, having a lot of this automated so you don't have to necessarily log into Feedly on a regular basis to be able to get this information. We like to deliver this to your inbox so that you can monitor that on an ongoing basis. So some of the features that we're going to look at in Feedly, looking at search and research, intel profiles, AI feeds, cyber attack agents, newsletters. We'll kind of show through those really quickly, and I'll try to be brief and keep this within about 5 minutes as well. So the first piece of this looking at is how to look at like historical diligence. So if we're looking at a new vendor, a lot of time when we're setting up an AI feed, that's looking at more information on a go forward basis. But we really want to be able to look backwards and see what kind of evaluation can I do on historical data. So research is actually really good for this. So putting in a prompt, like let's say for some reason I was going to onboard a vendor that was going to trigger some output here. If I were to put in something like do a vendor risk assessment or cybersecurity incident analysis for F5 as a potential vendor to onboard. So just by sending this in research, I can get, you can kind of see the response and I can get an output here that's giving me an assessment. So with an executive summary, with risk level, an overview with a timeline, risk categories. You can also see here that we're citing the actual sources in line. So I can see where this information is actually coming from to get to that really quickly. Seeing like disclosures and impact on the organization, concerns, recommended actions, that sort of thing. This is something that we could also turn into a actual report builder. Report builder is a feature that's currently in beta, but I did already do an onboarding report here where I could say, I've got an objective, a target audience, the organizational details, what writing style and what language. You can customize all of that. And then if you wanted to make edits or changes, this is very similar to what you would see like from Notion, where I could drag some things around or make edits directly to the document and then be able to export that either as a PDF or directly copy that to the clipboard. So really good, fast way to do some historical analysis and research on a specific vendor and to be able to have a actual output or a finished product that we could deliver. To do something more of an onboarding or like ongoing basis, I've got something here for Intel profiles. And as you can see, I'm going to be working through something like this tier one vendor list of some of these vendors that are, either for consideration or for monitoring for like third party ongoing monitoring to be able to track any new updates or news or triggers for these specific companies. So one of the things I mentioned was if I look at my AI feeds here, I've got a GRC vendor monitoring folder, but I can monitor things like mergers and acquisitions with that vendor list, cyber attacks, exposure monitoring. So looking for things that like misconfigurations or authentication bypass with that bucket to see any new articles that may impact those vendors, or also looking for regulatory changes or transgressions. So that's one way that we can monitor that. I know I mentioned cyber attacks here as well. I can also monitor that in my cyber attack agent, where those vendors are listed out here. And I see like what happened, what's the latest activity, how many articles are shared. These also will give me a link directly to that specific incident card. So I can go ahead and see like what happened, who was the victim. I get a full timeline, associated threat actors. I can also leverage the analyze feature to give me like an executive summary about that specific incident as well if I need to report on that too. But then also looking through this list of all these different triggers and monitors that I have here for all those vendors. vectors, I could also deliver a newsletter. So if I go in here and go to drafts, I've got one for a weekly risk briefing that I had created. So basically looking at all of those articles as inputs, then I can create something like this that kicks out either daily or weekly to give me like critical vendor incidents, exposures and misconfigurations, supply chain and mergers and acquisitions, industry context. And this is all customizable as well, again, with inline citations. So if I'm sending this to someone who maybe doesn't have access to Feedly, they'd be able to click on these links and go directly to those articles to see what's actually going on with that specific topic. So overall, just to kind of circle back to the main goal here, looking at that problem of all this due diligence beyond questionnaires and trying to find historical information as well as ongoing information, and then the solution to automate all of that through cyber attack agents, also through those newsletters, so that again, that I don't have to necessarily log into Feedly. Once I've configured that Intel profile to monitor for these companies, I've configured those AI feeds to monitor for specific topics. Delivering that to my inbox every morning or every week is a really great way to be able to monitor that on an ongoing automated basis.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks so much. I don't know what you guys can see. Are you guys seeing my screen?
Nope, I'm gonna steal it anyway. So
Okay. All right.
all right,
So-
cool.
Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, no worries. So CVSS based hunting and smarter patch prioritization, right? So if you look at CVSS vectors scoring, right, system, it looks like alphabet soup. There's just your cat maybe walked across your keyboard. It just looks kind of crazy. And if you're not familiar with it, you're like, what is this? How is this useful to me? And maybe you're a threat hunter and you just like, I don't care about this, right? Maybe this is some other team's problem. But what you may not realize is that like there's actually a lot of value in information in this, and you can actually translate these CVSS vectors into pointed threat hunts, right? So that you're not just looking at hypothetical threats, but you're actually looking at realized threats that are in your environment. And so today I want to talk about really quickly is how to translate this into meaningful threat hunts potentially, right? So here you'll see a couple of different filter sets that I've kind of put together, and it's like, okay, cool. Privileges required high, right? So maybe like, I don't know why this one's on here. Should have been none. But so no privileges required, no user interaction required, network vector, right? It's like, okay, what does all this mean? It means that like if you were to put no privileges required, no user interaction, and it's remote, what you have here is an unauthenticated remote execution type of attack, right? And so now you can start using this to say, hey, red team, like here's, let's look for exploited ones or those that have proof of concepts. And in this scenario too, unpatched, right? So it's like, hey, red team, do we have this in our environment? And if so, go ahead and start testing this, right? And so you can start using this as a way to start guiding those red teamers or those threat hunters in a very pointed direction as it relates to your environment, right? Because you can always add your tech stack in Feedly into this Intel agent. And so let me just show you quickly where you can find this within Feedly. So if you come to the vulnerability agent, you'll be able to come down into the filter set and see the CVSS vector information. And then you can actually hover over each of them if you're not familiar with these various vector scores are. And so you can actually kind of hover and see what they all are, right? And so maybe your company is one that relies on high availability of your product. And so maybe here we can start seeing what CVSS vector impact high and the attack vector is network. And so what happens here is you can see a scenario where this could result in some sort of denial of service attack, right? So what, maybe I use a Intel profile list and I say my custom tech stack. And so from here I can say, hey, reasonably within my environment in the last 3 months, there are about 377 vulnerabilities that could lead to some sort of denial of service scenario. And so while this isn't the exact, like, hey, this is what it will result in, this at least gives you somewhere to start looking, right? And then again, adding in things like proof of concept can make this more impactful to teams like Red Team or people that are going to do some of those pen tests. So essentially what I want you to take away is learn what the various vectors are, start combining them and playing with them in different fashions. We'll eventually post a blog with some of the other examples of this, but just wanted to show teams that you can use this vector information to start doing some threat hunts. Thank you for that.
Awesome, Andy. Yeah, so thinking about how you might show more value to the vulnerability team or actually leverage some of that data in your threat hunts is a really good use of that. We haven't heard that too much, but I think it makes a lot of sense. There was a question that just disappeared. I was going to ask it to you, Andy.
I think I just answered that.
Oh,
It was about filtering vulnerabilities by EPSS score versus CVSS. That should be a filter while available in the agent, which Andy can leverage.
yeah, the other one was as a potential CorpSec executive protection use case, could this CVSS vector be applied to targeted typo squatting or impersonation threat hunts?
Those vulnerabilities really exist outside of the scope of CVE and the vector data, because that relies on domains that are being stolen and things of that nature. So I think that might be a little bit out of scope, but you definitely can use the EPSS filter for the vulnerability agent to see those vulnerabilities that are most likely to be exploited.
Okay, there was one more question. I thought this is a good question. Since this third party, this is Aaron, pay attention here. Since this third party risk assessment uses Feedly sources and AI analysis, how can organizations judge how trustworthy the data is? And what controls are in place to ensure that changing or incomplete OSINT data does not unfairly affect vendor risk decisions?
That's a good question. Overall, Feedly's connected to about 140 million different sources, and we are constantly bringing in new information and crawling for updates to articles as well. So, especially looking at things like the research functionality or the cyber attack agent. Anytime there's new information published on that, we're bringing it in and aggregating it. So yeah, leveraging research and leveraging for AI, we are leveraging an LLM to be able to generate that type of reporting, but there's also all those inline citations. And so it's always incumbent on us to make sure, like, as we are doing that due diligence, that we are validating those sources and making sure that we're comfortable with them. Didn't quite showcase it in the report builder function, but you also have the ability to select and choose those sources as well. So we give full control and full transparency to the sources that are used, and definitely are bringing those in on a regular basis. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so we are going to move back into the presentation. Denise, you're up.
Yes, thank you. And I'm going to share my slide now. Can everyone see my screen?
I am seeing the right screen. Yep.
Yeah, perfect. Alrighty, so pivoting on from that threat hunting piece just covered by Andy, I'm going to be looking at threat hunting from a TTP perspective. So the problem here that I'm trying to solve is being able to identify real and immediate risk in your environment as an organization. So whilst looking at the broader threat landscape, monitoring is important, what we also want to make sure that we extract from all the resources that we have is immediate risk that can actually successfully materialize into our environment. And the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to be using a different type of Feedly products to firstly aggregate all the assets that my organization uses into one list. So that's the Intel profile that Aaron was just showing earlier. I'm going to use the TTP Intel agent to filter all the TTPs that are observed targeting my list, identify which are the threat actors and the malwares that are mostly associated with targeting my list using those TTPs, and then using other analysis tool to provide a risk assessment of which of my assets are more at risk and how they can be successfully exploited, therefore how that risk can successfully materialize. And finally, I'm going to touch upon really quickly on the report builder to generate a quick report, actionable report ready to be consumed. So to start with, I'm going to go to create my Intel agent, and I'm going to be creating a TTP Intel agent here. There we go, and click on continue. Now, I'm going to pretend here that I'm a financial organization in the US, just to give some additional context to my TTP Intel agents. I can filter by focus, CTPs, threat actors, and malware. And so I'm going to start by putting my list in there, and my list should be called Jan 2026. I've given it a very identifiable name, and then I'm just going to put as a country, applicable country, United States. So again, giving the Intel agent that context to provide more targeted data, and therefore develop more targeted intelligence. Now, at a first glance, I can see there are a series of TTPs that are being used against my tech stack in the context of the United States in the past 7 days. So this is very latest, fresh data. And what my eye first catches here is that there are a series of threat actors and malware that kind of repeat across all the TTPs, giving me the impression that these are the threat actors and malware. So give me the understanding, I should say, that these are the threat actors and malware that I should be more focused on. So just as an example, I'm going to grab APT28 and open the insight card for this threat actor, just to see how this threat actors behave in its campaigns and activities. And here the insight card really provides me a full profile of the threat actors. But here, what I need to know and what I want to do is just see how this threat actor targets my tech stack and which my tech stack is more at risk based on this threat actor's capabilities. So what I'm going to do is use the analyze tool to run a prompt and extract exactly that information. Now, when we open the analyze tool, which is our Ask AI tool, the LLM that Sean was just describing at the beginning of this call, I can ask a question that will gather resources and information to answer that question, both from this insight card as well as from our threat graph. So our trained intelligence analyst almost in LLM format. Now, because I do not like typing live, I did prepare a prompt already. And it's also quite a lengthy prompt. So it'll be just easier to copy and paste it in here. And what my prompt is doing here is I'm providing my LLM some context, telling it that I'm a financial organization and these are my assets, which we've also added in the intro profile. And the task really is here to tell me which one of my assets, I ask it to be the top 3, are more at risk, and how this threat actor is known for targeting my assets. What are the attack chains, and what are the things that I can do to mitigate this risk from materializing and impacting my organization. Now, I'm going to go and run that and give it a minute. Okay, so this was really quick, of course, because I had already run this before. But it would take just a few minutes to go through the threat graph and all the information and provide my answer. And it just told me, and it's just telling me that the assets that I should be more focused on are my Microsoft Exchange, Citrix Virtual Desktop, and what else I got in there? I think it was Swift. Yeah, and it's Swift. So it's telling me, it's answering exactly that question. I have that intelligence ready to consume and pass on to my security team to take some actions. I know which ones are high risk, why they are high risk, what are the exploitation prerequisites for the threat actors to successfully exploit vulnerabilities within these vulnerable assets. What are the attack chains? So once I know the attack chains, I can also advise on preventing these attack chains from being executed in my environment, and also, again, mitigation recommendations. So I have this response all ready to be consumed, and what I can do is scroll all the way down to my response and use the report builder to generate a report. Aaron briefly showed this earlier, and what I want to do here is perhaps provide a flash report. All right, and now it's opening the report builder page for me. I'm sorry, this is taking a minute. All right, sorry about that. I'm going to try that again. the fun of live demo. There we go, it's generating the answer for me again. And I'm gonna try this again. There we go. So I'm gonna give it an audience. So my audience is my security team. And my organization details, I have it already prepared here. And I'm going to select a writing style, and I want to have precise language. This is a technical report to advise the team. And I'm going to go ahead and generate that report now. And it's generating that report for me. I'm sorry about this resolution. I think it's my screen, my second screen resolution here that is limiting the view. Now, once this
Resolution
report,
seems fine from our side.
Oh yeah, okay. Now, what this report will do, what this will do for me, the report builder, is put together all this information that I extracted with the AskAI through my research, provide an executive summary, the threat overview, give me all that important data, such as the IoCs and the attack vectors and CTPs for the threat actors, to then export this report in PDF format and pass it on to my security team to take action. Now, this has seemed to take a while, and I do not want to take up all the time, so I can share the report results in PDF later if we have some time at the end, and pass the mic back to the stage. Thank you.
Okay, well, I guess Saif is already grabbing controls. He's ready to present here. Denise, I'm trying to look if there was any specific questions for you. Not really. Everybody keeps jumping in and answering the questions. So just a note to everybody, if you see, maybe you have a question, go look at the answers in the Q&A too. Maybe they apply to you as well. So. Oh, by the way, the other thing we do when we send out the link tomorrow is there'll be a link to a Notion doc. That Notion doc will include the Q&A that you had submitted here. I'll make sure that those are included, as well as Denise's prompts. So Denise, before you sign off today, I know you're in Italy and it's later. Can you send the prompts that you use, because there was a specific question to see them?
Yeah, sounds good. I will.
Thanks.
Perfect. So I'll try to keep it short and sweet. So reality for all of us is that 7 a.m. email from your CISO, or maybe you're the CISO sending it. The subject line is simple: are we exposed? A company has been breached, and suddenly it's a scramble to figure out what happened and what it means to your organization. And that scramble usually turns into the same set of questions. So do we use the same vendor? Is it in our tech stack? Are we next? And so that problem, without a structured OSINT collection and a consistent way to translate it, becomes manual triage. And so teams end up reacting, stitching together incomplete reporting, chasing context across various different sources, and trying to convert those technical details into business impact. And so what we actually don't need is more OSINT. We need faster relevance and a repeatable translation layer. And so with the cyber attack agent and Intel profile list, we can instantly surface those threats that matter to us and then translate them over to what leadership actually needs. So that's exposure, impact, and next steps. And the key to making that actionable every time is a simple framework I use to translate technical intelligence into business risk. It's comprised of 4 parts. So first is threat, what happened; relevance, why it matters to us; impact, so what it could cost us, ideally a dollar figure using comparable incidents and credible reporting. And then lastly, action. So what do we do now? The specific mitigations, hunts, controls that we can validate. So let me show you what that looks like within Feedly. So right here, we have the cyber attack agent. And along with that, you get Intel profile lists. I like to segment it based on your tech stack, your vendor. So being a financial institution, you might have vendors in your payment sector, security, market infra. And the benefit about this is you can reuse those same Intel profilers across different agents, so vulnerability agent, TTP agent, as well as your AI feeds. And right away, you can see the victim, the bluff statement, as well as latest activity, as well as the trend chart. And then if I wanted to pivot into a cyber attack insight card, I can just quickly click on it, get more in-depth summary, as well as a timeline, which is useful for board reporting and updates. From there, analyze opens up a way to translate that technical risk into business risk. And so, as Denise mentioned, I have a saved prompt. So you don't necessarily have to copy and paste. You can also save that prompt. And running that prompt will give you that quick executive summary, as well as it looks across all our OSINT reporting, as well as our threat graph, gives you a clean one-liner or two-liner in this case, as well as the recommendation with those 4 steps in mind. So you can reuse this throughout different cyber attacks and breaches. And on an end note, if you were looking to get real-time notifications, you can use our Feedly API. We have a custom script on our GitHub page to reuse. You can reuse the script to get those real-time notifications. Perfect.
Awesome. No questions for you, Seth? Getting a little bit of background noise. Sounds like somebody's cars, traffic, something. I don't know what that was. Okay. Carlo.
Yeah. Can everyone see my screen okay? Just give me a thumbs up. We're good.
You're good.
Perfect. Okay, so we've just obviously been talking from the guys here about proactive measures and how to best prepare your environment or bolster your defenses effectively against real and relevant threats. Let's kind of flip the script a little bit here and think of this from another perspective. What do we do if we've been targeted or we have a live incident? So the problem I'm trying to approach here is, maybe we have some indicators of compromise, but attribution takes hours when every minute counts. So you've got a live incident, every second is crucial. So what's the solution? I mean, the solution here is obviously we need to connect those indicators to threat actors, revealing their TTPs, malware arsenal, and then try and figure out what our next move is for our sort of response plan. Now, how do we do that with Feedly? Now, I want to look at 2 kind of different scenarios here. And the first scenario is a very basic one. If you're working in a SOC or a security team, maybe you've got an EDR alert with a suspicious file. Maybe you have one file hash, and you kind of want to see what it's about. Now, to do that with Feedly, there's many different ways, but I'm going to focus on one tool at the moment, the research tool. Now, this is a natural language search bar that really gives you direct access to Feedly's threat graph. And it's kind of like a purpose-built knowledge graph of cybersecurity entities, has the relationships and automatically extracted threat intelligence sources all in one place. And this is kind of a backdoor into that threat graph. So as I mentioned, in this scenario, I'm a SOC analyst. I've got one file hash. What I want to do is just drop that in here. So I've got a file hash. I just randomly grabbed it from somewhere earlier. I'm going to drop it into the research tool. No context, and just throw it in here. So when I run that, you'll see the little search engine going in the background. It's accessing that threat graph. If you caught that there, you may have seen Malwarebytes was also being pulled in. So we are using open source intelligence as well. And what it's done here is provided a little report. Now this file hash, like say, it was very random. I pulled it from just a news article earlier. But by putting it in here, I can see that it's got a little overview. It tells me that this is WinOS4, which is a loader component used in a sophisticated malware campaign. And then we actually have more additional information. We've got technical classification, some file names, the infection chain role, which is pretty cool. Here is telling me this file serves as a stage 2 in a multi-stage infection process. And we've actually got the full flow here. So execution flow, so the initial deployment is dropped by a Trojanized Rust desk. We've even got the file hash there. So, those SOC analysts, we think, oh, that's great. I've got another IOC I can add to maybe my threat hunt. Loader operations, so how it actually works. and then actually the deployment method as well. So this is an in-memory deployment. And if you're unsure what that means, a little bit further down here, that's an evasion technique. So that's loading the executable code without writing files, and that can evade things like traditional AV detection. Some additional points I just want to cover. I'm not going to read the whole thing here. We've got the what it's actually doing. So we've got some surveillance information, credential theft, malware deployment, network infrastructure. So another IOC we can pull from the system. So this is a C2 server. Campaign context, so it just gives you a little bit of background of what it's doing. I think someone mentioned typo squatting in the chat earlier. So, this is part of a typo squatting campaign. And this new part down the bottom, detection response. Now, a lot of people think of detection response as just one complete entity, but when you think about it, there's maybe various levels. Here we've got a breakdown for security teams. So some recommendations, watch for outbound connections to a C2 server, a little bit of behavioral analysis. As I mentioned, it's in memory. So you're going to have to do memory scanning for that particular file hash, process monitoring. And then you've also got the individual side. So the end user, a little bit of recommendations for them. I know when I worked in the SOC, a lot of the time you were providing these reports on an instant. If it was an EDR report, maybe you had to give, you had to do maybe the security team actions where you're blocking IPs, but you also had to give recommendations for the end user. Don't click that email you received from a Nigerian prince, that kind of thing. But a good bit of information here. In the space of 30 seconds, we have one IOC is potentially become a full threat profile in that sort of quick time space. And someone was actually mentioned in the chat about how do we validate our LLM and our statements. You'll see these little citation points. They're all inline. So every time we give you a statement, we're giving you the inline citation. So you can trust the statement, but you can also verify it for yourself as well. The other point we have here is, Denise was great at pointing these out. We have insight cards. So these little highlights here, if I want to know more about Windows, more details, I can click on that. That'll give me a full insight card. And as I mentioned, this is really random. So actually the information is a little bit limited, but I'll come clear in just a second. But if I want to get a little bit more information, just scroll down. We've got the IOC, we've got related TTPs, we've got related articles for that as well. So this one here, it's a little bit older, 3 months ago, but if we want to do a deep dive, we can have a look into that. Now, the reason I'm saying it's a little bit niche, if I look at the associated threat actor, which is Void Arachne, by clicking on this threat actor, we know this is actually a Chinese-based APT that primarily targets Chinese-speaking users. So it's not as widespread as maybe something that we see globally, but you get a little bit more information, which is great for pivot points for investigation. If you want to do a complete deep dive, I mean, here we're getting more IOCs, more TTPs, but I'm assuming most people as a SOC analyst or a security team, they get that IOC, and the most information here is probably more than you actually ever need to create an assessment or an action plan. So that's kind of the first one that we have. That first scenario, you've got basic IOC, and then you kind of want to pivot from there and figure out what you want to do with it. The second scenario that I want to work on is a different one. So say you're an instant responder or you're deep in investigation and you've observed some specific TTPs, multiple indicators of compromise, and that maybe there's no clear attribution yet, and you really want to know who you're dealing with. So using the research tool again, if I start from scratch, so if I go to new search here, I've got a prompt that I've pre-prepared. So for the guys in the UK, here's one I made earlier. If I drop that in here, this prompt, just a little bit of information here. It looks very complex. It's actually very basic. All I'm saying is I have these TTPs, I have these IOCs, and then provide a list of who the most likely threat actor is with some estimates for attribution, and giving it an example. So that's just some good prompting. Give it some examples. It helps it provide a better answer. I've also used some great manners there for whenever AI takes over the world. So as it's processing, what we're doing here is it's going to compare information in our threat graph and look through it, do a deep dive into our threat graph and figure out who is the most likely threat actor. So here's giving me a nice little table. In that table, we've got shiny hunters, 95% likelihood, scattered spider, they'll often be some crossover here. And then, at the bottom here, we've got maybe lapses. But what it's done as well is it's actually given me a detailed attribution assessment. Now here we've got shiny hunters. Now these IoCs and TTPs were actually taken from a real shiny hunters incident a few months ago. So yeah, I'm glad that I actually brought up shiny hunters as 95% likelihood, but it gives you the evidence behind that as well. So it's got supporting evidence. We're saying this is shiny hunters because of X, Y, Z. And if I go down to the bottom here and look at, like, say, lapses, there is some crossover, 40%, but there's a lower likelihood based on limited operational overlap. So it's a good little detailed report going on there in terms of trying to figure out who the likely threat actor is. So the next step is, we've identified shiny hunters. We're incident responders. We kind of need to know where to go next. So I'm going to grab shiny hunters. Again, we have those inline hyperlinks. This will bring up our insight cards. And I'm not going to go into everything here. I think Denise covered a few bits and pieces earlier. We've got a lot of information here. These are live, so we're updating these with information from millions of sources about shiny hunters. So here we've got a little bit of overview, some aliases, who they're currently targeting, targeting industries and organizations. This is very useful if you want to maybe look at your particular industry and maybe see have a look at the articles related to there. There might be a new story that you could have a look into. But more importantly, things like associated malware, indicators of compromise, which you can directly export. So if you want to do a threat hunt, you can do a threat hunt directly from here just by exporting the IoCs. And then TTPs. So all the associated TTPs for this threat group, I'm going to come back to this. Exploited vulnerabilities, so known exploited vulnerabilities for this threat group. And also here, so if you're using Oracle, for example, you can have a look into this CVE. That'll open up a new insight card, which you can then have a look into, deep dive, see if you need to patch that. And then scrolling down again, we have things like detection rules, which is great for preventative measures in the future. We can download that directly through Feedly, or we can see the source where we're grabbing it from. And then, like everything we do in Feedly, we pull in all this open sources. Here's your threat intelligence report. So this one is from 3 days ago, so it might be very relevant as an incident responder to have a look through that threat intelligence report. And then we've got some news. Now, I'm not going to touch on analyze. I think Saif and Denise have talked about this. You can ask questions directly. That's contextual. So if I wanted to, I could click on analyze here, and I could ask questions about this threat actor. I'm not going to do that for time. But what I want to touch on is just very quickly your TTPs here. Now, as an incident responder, we might be at a certain point in that campaign, and we want to figure out where they've been and where they're going next. Now, we have a direct integration with MITRE Navigator, and at the top here, you can see Open in Navigator. If I click this button, it will automatically populate MITRE Navigator with everything in that insight card. It'll build it out, map it out, and I can now see what is currently going on. Now, to make things a little bit easier, I'm going to use a quick tip here, select unannotated, technique controls, toggle state, layer controls, and then hit this eyeball. It'll remove all that noise, so I can now see the complete attack chain for this threat group. So I could figure out where I am, where they're going next, and whether, what they're going to do going forward. Okay, now back to the insight card. What I kind of want to cover here is, this is obviously a very quick run through, but what this research tool does, it kind of acts as a threat intelligence analyst. It connects all those dots from unknown indicators to attribution and kind of creates like a predictive intelligence for you. Now, I don't think I have enough time. I don't know if anyone can give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I can quickly show this if you want to do it through the MCP server. Someone going to give me a thumbs up? Okay, so no one's answering, but what I'm going to do is just very quickly, I have this pre-prepared. We do have MCP server, which Alessandro is going to touch a little bit more on, but we can run the same question, but using the MCP server. If you have things like Microsoft Copilot, it's a great tool. We can run that same question, that same prompt, but it gives us a more detailed answer. I mean, here we're getting things like IOC hunting, threat hunting queries, and a more detailed report. Thank you very much.
Awesome, Carlo. Thank you so much. Don't see any direct questions related to this topic. Let me see. Yeah, no. So Alessandro, this is always happens as the last person. You get squeezed a little bit. So you've got about 5 minutes.
All good. I'll answer this in five or less. Distinct pleasure of bringing us home here. Cool. So just a little bit of context about this particular use case. Last few months, since we've kind of come out with the MCP server, I've received a lot of customer kind of questions around developing periodic reporting for their kind of threat intel programs. That basically goes beyond some of the individual incident focused reports they typically do, pulling this out for leadership in kind of the form of the most trending or most impactful incidents that they've kind of seen. So to basically classify this problem, strategic threat reporting can be prone to inconsistencies, diverse outputs that don't really match as time goes on. And if you've ever been in the shoes of preparing those reports, it's extremely manual to kind of comb through those different incidents to see, what has been most impactful for your org. So lots of time spent on intel gathering, less on actual like synthesis of those different emerging trends and patterns there. So and again, if you give like different analysts the same data set, a lot of the times they'll produce like vastly different outputs from that same data. So pretty interesting challenge there. So from a solution standpoint, basically using Feedly's MCP server and your favorite LLM, in my case Claude, but we also have a hookup with OpenAI as well as Copilot to basically directly query Feedly's threat graph, which we've kind of covered great length in this webinar. So very useful to tap into that data. The MCP server, if I recall correctly, has about 16 structured function calls split across different GET requests, trending, which is pretty impactful for this workflow, and also search for different incidents and even like IoCs and things of that nature too. I did include the setup guide that's linked for Claude. If you do have any other kind of use cases for some of the other LLMs, we can also share that across after the webinar too. That's probably the most difficult part about this workflow is actually getting hooked up. Beyond that, these structured calls will give you, the data, and the LLM will basically translate and reason to basically synthesize those patterns. All of this takes shape using like a curated prompt that I've drafted, and I'll just share that here. The kind of key point to note here is you can use natural language inputs. You can see how short my open-ended prompt is. But you can also get very, specific and asking the kind of LLM to pull specific calls here for your strategic threat intel report. So in this case, I've asked it to pull together an exec summary, current threat priorities, threat actor activity, so on and so forth. And it will actually move through all these structured calls to give you this output. The beauty of it is it's highly replicable and scalable across like, various use cases that you have. To show you what this kind of looks like in Claude itself, I've just dropped the prompt in and didn't want to waste time having it reason through it, but you can see it's pulling out these specific structured calls that our teams kind of built on the MCP side, looking at trending cyber attacks, trending threat actors, pulling out the most relevant insights from those time horizons there. So pretty useful to actually pull this out for your leaders or your stakeholders, whoever you're reporting this content to. One thing I didn't mention in the prompt is you can actually specify further based on your industry scope. So maybe you're in the finance sector and you want to pull out the most trending incidents that have taken place there. And you can see it's followed that specific structure and flow, giving me my current threat priorities and moving into threat actor activity, kind of CVEs and which ones have been most impactful over the past several weeks there as well. So there's a pretty, comprehensive assessment of the threat landscape done in a very, quick way, which is great. So a lot of, additional time to do more reasoning on the analyst side. So I've had the prompt spit it out in Markdown format, but you can also have it do it in HTML as well for something a little bit more visually appealing. Using Markdown allows you to kind of copy and paste into different word processors or other formats, maybe the report builder on the Feedly side. But HTML is great if you're ever presenting it in such a way here and just a little bit, more visually appealing. So again, what you'll find here is, hopefully some time saved, something that's highly replicable and consistent across, different analysts leveraging this, and hopefully some better visibility into some of these trending threats. So hope that's helpful. We'll share the prompt as well as the setup guide beyond this webinar here. But that's one of the ways to pull out some strategic threat reporting using Feedly's MCP in a nutshell. So if you have any questions, happy to answer those.
No, thanks, Alessandro. That was good. If you do want a little bit more detail, we do have, if you go to our, oh shoot, I should probably put that in a chat so you guys know where it is. Gabby, can you do that? Can you put the link to CTI session so they can see the previous one that Dave did on MCP server? So there's a whole CTI session webinar that we did in December, right before that goes into a little bit more detail, some of the setup and some of the things you could do with it. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. We did get a couple, one person asked for help. We'll make sure we follow up with you, Andrea. And okay, I think we've answered all the questions that we can. If you guys didn't get your question answered, all these things will get logged, and I will send out a link tomorrow to the replay, to the deck, to the Q&A. All that stuff will be in an email that automatically gets sent to everybody who's registered. The link's open, so if you want to share it with your teammate, feel free. So with that said, thank you so much, team. TI advisors did a great job. I appreciate how you walked through all these different topics. It was tough, but you got it done on time. So thank you so much. And we'll close. Thank you.
Thank you.